The systematic persecution and murder of approximately 6 million European Jews stands out as one of the darkest chapters in human history. The concentration camps of Nazi Germany were the main scenes of the innumerable torture, dehumanization, and mass death that ended the lives of countless victims. Those who were lucky enough to escape this machinery relive the horrors to which they were subjected and, in some cases, share them in order to keep the memory alive. That is why their testimonies are fundamental when it comes to understanding and reflecting on what was experienced inside the concentration camps. Today, we will tell you about the operation of the worst extermination camps in Nazi Germany, based on the testimonies of their own protagonists. Let's begin. We start with the largest mass murder site in human history. The Auschwitz complex was divided into 3 sections: the original concentration camp, a place of extermination where the women were located, and another space to carry out slave labor. There, millions of people were murdered in the most appalling conditions. The testimony of Irene Vogelweiss, one of the survivors of the Holocaust, allows us to know the most chilling details of that place. This girl was transferred to Auschwitz together with her family in 1944. She remembers that when she arrived, her father inspected the scene from the train and was able to see the prisoners in his uniforms in an apparently organized space. This reassured them and made them think that it was a simple labor camp. However, they would soon discover that they were the victims of a carefully orchestrated extermination plan. All families entering this field were immediately separated on the arrival platform. Irene's case was no exception. Taken away from her parents, she and her sister were singled out for forced labor. During her terrible stay, Irene was able to see and experience how the SS kept the prisoners in terrible conditions. Many times they were forced to walk in the snow without proper clothing, and when someone felt exhausted or sick, they were simply shot. And not only that, after a short time Irene noticed that the main objective within those walls was to kill children in order to annihilate the new generations. On several occasions she was able to see the columns of women and minors who entered the door of the crematorium completely unawares. Also, she remembers hearing the gas chambers going on day and night. The organizational system within the death camps was full of deceit, many of them with deadly consequences. The members of the Third Reich coldly recount how they made the Jews believe that they were going to take a shower when, in reality, they were leading them to their final destination. According to several of their own testimonies, the Nazis told the prisoners that they would be sent to work, but first they had to wash and disinfect themselves to prevent the spread of disease. However, minutes after undressing, the prisoners were led through the corridors that led to the gas chambers. Johann Paul Kramer, who served as a doctor at Auschwitz, recalls his participation in the gassing of one such group of women. Kramer recounts that the prisoners were forced to undress in the open air, then sat on the ground waiting and crying as they begged the SS men to spare their lives, until they were finally killed. Regarding this, he mentions, "As an anatomist, I have seen many terrible things. I had had a lot of experience with dead bodies, and yet what I saw that day was unlike anything I had ever seen before." But despite being shocked by his subsequent statements, Kramer continued to actively participate in those tasks and was involved in human experimentation on Auschwitz prisoners. We could talk for hours about the crimes committed only in this place, but we want to present you with other equally terrible examples, so let's move on to the next one. Sobibor. This extermination site was created in March 1942 and was part of Operation Reinhard, a secret Nazi operation to exterminate millions of Polish Jews. Sobibor stood out for being the scene of the largest escape of prisoners from a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. The prisoners, organized by Polish resistance fighter Leon Feldhandler and Soviet prisoner of war Alexander Pachersky, planned not only escape but revenge. The plan? Simple: escape while executing as many officers as possible. It is in this context that one of the most impressive stories emerges within that sinister place, the case of Selma Engel and her husband Heim. Selma Engel Wijenberg was a Dutch Holocaust survivor. According to her own account, when she was just 21 years old, she was taken to this camp to be killed, and she barely managed to stay alive by eating canned sardines that she had taken from the luggage of other Jews. However, everything changed the day she met Chaim, a 27-year-old Polish soldier who would end up becoming her husband. The young people met for the first time at a strange and chilling dance held in the Nazi camp. One night the Germans lit a bonfire to burn the bodies of the Jews who had been executed and forced some of the prisoners to gather and play instruments while others danced in the light of the flames. As a result, the need to escape became even more pressing for these young people. And while Chaim wasn't part of the original group of prisoners who planned the escape, when the time came for the rebellion, he had no problem taking the life of one of the SS guards. Dominated by anger and the desire for revenge, Chaim only remembers that he stabbed the guard while shouting, "This is for my father, for my mother, for all the Jews you killed." After taking out several officers, the prisoners jumped over the camp's barbed wire fence and fled into the woods. Some were shot and others were killed by landmine explosions. But the rest finally made it. The Engels were protected by Polish farmers, moving from house to house to avoid being captured again. Walking at night and hiding during the day, they became survivors of one of humanity's greatest horrors. Treblinka. This camp operated between July 1942 and October 1943. Unlike other concentration camps in which the prisoners were forced to perform forced labor, Treblinka had a single, lapidary function, to murder the inmates. The upper camp was the part of Treblinka that contained the gas chambers, where Jews were killed and their corpses placed in large pits to be burned. There was Heinrich Mathis, a German SS commander and member of the team tasked with carrying out the executions. By his own account, about 14 Germans were operating in that part of Treblinka. In total, they had 6 gas chambers that were constantly active and whose capacity allowed them to enter approximately 300 people in each one. The people, already resigned to their fate, entered them without putting up any resistance. The gas chambers were closed for about 30 minutes, and when they were opened, the bodies were removed to be cremated. In the fall of 1942, while serving at Treblinka, Mathis shot 2 prisoners because the stretcher they used to transport bodies had not been properly cleaned to his satisfaction by the end of the working day. This demonstrates the harshness and extreme violence that was handled in that hell. But the brutality of this camp is made absolutely clear by listening to the testimony of Samuel Willenberg, a prisoner who managed to escape. He tells us the story of a German war veteran who lost his leg while fighting in World War I. That man was transferred to Treblinka and he thought that if he entered with all his medals, he would receive some kind of special treatment. However, the Nazis killed him like all the other Jews. Since he could not walk, they avoided the gas chambers and opted to shoot him dead. Prior to its liberation at the hands of the Allies, the Treblinka facilities were destroyed by the retreating German army, leaving almost no evidence of the atrocities committed within its fences. However, it is estimated that between 700,000 and 900,000 Jews were murdered in its gas chambers. These were some of the sinister stories that happened in the worst Nazi death camps. We reached the end of our video and we want to thank you for joining us. We'll meet again in the next episode of Military History.